Okay, so we're doing a grave robber review, and we're going to talk about things like her stats, her skills, her camp skills. We're talking about her trinkets, generally her very rare and rare. We're not going to talk about quirks. I lied. We're not talking about quirks. So let's chop that. We're going to talk about her best positioning and her best partners. And it's kind of listed here, but we're going to get into detail if anything. So let's start with stats, right? So here we have the averages of everybody in the game. So that's just basically me taking all of the stats of these are level 6 stats. So these are level 6 stats of every character. These are maxed out stats, and I took the averages, and we're gonna do a comparison down here. Basically, just move the grave robber stats out. You can see that they're the same right here. Those are the same as the ones we have down here. Uh, Red means you're below average. Green means you're above average. Light green means you're only slightly above average. So we can see here right away the grave robber has a below average HP stat, one of the lowest in the game actually. She's got a slightly above average dodge, a very above average, actually the highest in the game, speed and crit. We've got a decently like a below average damage range. 7 to 14 is below the average of 8 to 15 and a half. We've got below average stun resist, above average blight resist, average disease resist. Most people have this disease resist anyway. 30 is kind of the common. Move resist is low. Bleed resist is slightly below average. Debuff slightly below average. Trap is the best in the game, so just trap disarm is the best in the game. And she's got a movement of 2 forward and 2 back. So what do we like see out of these stats? We see that she is a pretty fragile character that relies on dodge kind of to stay alive, but it's not very high. Actually, technically she's tied for second place with like 5 other characters, but the Jester one, two, three, four, five, six. She's tied with second place for 5 other characters, and the Jester is at 35. So this is one of the higher dodges in the game, but it's still only slightly above average. Speed. So she's a very speed oriented and very offensively oriented character with low damage stats for some reason. Very mixed messages here that I'm getting. We can see high crit, so she's kind of going to be an unreliable damage dealer, and you'll see that as we go through the skills. These stats basically are workable with. High blight resist is very good because you don't want to get dotted as a frail character. All right, so here we have the grave robber, a maxed out grave robber. Is that the second thing? Skills, you're right. So let's talk about her skills. So the first one we have here is pick to the face. This is my optimal layout for her, I guess, in terms of skills, and we're going to talk about why. Pick to the face is actually on here because we have nothing better to run. These 3 skills are pretty bad, and we'll explain why later, but it is at least an armor piercing, and sometimes you need to get through heavy prot enemies. It has a pretty low crit mod compared to her other skills. At max level and max grave robber rank, we've only got a 15% chance to crit, so that's 10 plus 5 here. So we've only got a 15% chance to crit. We're critting roughly 1 every 7 hits. That's okay, but we have a negative damage mod as well, which is like kind of doubling down on the grave robbers even lower, like already low damage to make it even lower. The accuracy is slightly above average, the average being roughly 107-ish for most moves. Armor piercing is the only noble thing about this, and of course it can be launched from the first 3 ranks of your team and hits the first 2 ranks of the enemy team, so that's pretty good because generally those are the ones that have prot anyway. Protection. Lunge here is actually her best skill by a long shot. We've got a high accuracy. We've got a positive damage mod for some reason, and it's 40%, so you're getting roughly almost 1.5 times her damage in terms of output for lunge. So really, this should say, when you use lunge, this says 10 or 11 through 21 damage. That's pretty above average. 11 through 21 is way above the 8 through 15.5 that we decided was average earlier. Right, so this skill is very good, also especially because it has a plus 12 crit mod, which brings you up to 22 crit. and that means you're critting once every roughly 5 hits, and that's insane. That's pretty good. And you can even further buff it with, you know, quirks and trinkets. The plus damage versus blight is not too important. The most important part of this move is that damage mod and the fact that it moves forward 2 slots. So the sheer power of this move is going to incentivize you to try and get this move off twice in a row, perhaps, to try and finish off enemies in the 3rd rank as quickly as possible. Oh, that's right. It can be launched from the back 2 and hits the first 3 ranks of the enemy. Flashing daggers is probably one of her worst moves. AoEs are pretty weak in this game. You don't want to spread out damage. You want to focus people down specifically. So we're just going to slide over it. Shadow Fade is a staple on her set. Not because it's good. I mean, of course, these buffs are okay. They're pretty good. Like, they're decent. But it's a staple on our set because we need to sometimes reset ourselves. We might be in a position where we cannot lunge. We might be in a position where we're in positions 1 and 2, and we want to move her back into 3 and 4 so that she can set up for a lunge. Along the way, we also pick up a bunch of damage, a bunch of crit, and a decent amount of dodge to set her up. And I really don't recommend leading with Shadow Fade. It's a waste of a move, generally, and it's just an interruption for your lunges. Thrown Dagger is here to round out her set. So you see that lunge reaches the first 3 ranks, which means it has a weakness of not being able to reach the 4th rank, which Thrown Dagger does cover. It's got the same crit mod, so it crits as frequently as lunge does. It's got the same damage versus blighted buff that lunge has, so it's the same basically. But it does have a lower negative damage mod, which brings her damage slightly lower, but it gives her the ability to hit rank 4. Pretty good. It also buffs her accuracy by 10, which is very good for a specific fight. It's very good for the Brigand Pounder. But other than that, it's not too notable, outside of the fact that it just covers lunge's weakness. Poison Darts is not very good. It's at max rank, it blights for 4, over 4 rounds, which is a total of 16 damage, which is very good. But we don't, like, generally we don't have, we can't wait 4 turns to deal that much damage. We need to get bigger blight numbers for dots. In terms of dots, we need to get bigger blight and bleed numbers up front. So something like the Plague Doctor, which blights for 6 or 7, is much better than Poison Darts, which only blights for 4 on one enemy. A notable thing with this, though, is that it has a very good crit mod, and if you crit with dots, they apply 1.5 times the duration. So if you crit with this, you actually apply a 4x6 dot, but it still has the same problem of the damage is very backloaded, and we don't want backloaded damage. I want my damage now, and I want it nice and big, just like lunge does. So we've got Toxin Trickery here. I would not recommend using this. So Grave Robber has the highest speed in the game, right? So if we increase her speed any further, we run the risk of having her be on death's door with a dot on her, rolling speed before your healer, and then rolling on death's door. We don't want to roll on death's door. We want as many chances to not roll on death's door in that situation as possible. Toxin Trickery does the exact opposite. It makes it so you have less chances to get out of that sticky situation. And so this is a very bad move. It does give battle long buffs of dodge, but we're not trying to gamble here. We can easily get away with not gambling with playing with Shadow Fade and lunging. We can have her flick back and forth between the front line and the back line. I'd rather have that than playing with Toxin Trickery. Next is camp skills. So Snuffbox here is disease removal. It's disease management. That's very good. Saves a lot of money. Doesn't give her any combat value, obviously, so not very notable outside of money saving. Generally won't be used for boss fights. Gallows Humor is one of the best stress healing skills in the game. This is a very good skill. Minus 25 stress for herself, and then you get chances to either gain stress for your companions, which is 25%. You get 25% chance to gain stress. But you get a 75% chance to subtract stress off of them, stress heal them. I did some math, and you can verify it if you want, but the expected value out of this skill is about 63 stress heal. You're going to heal 63 stress across your team, expected value wise. That is insane for an exchange of 4 camp points. Just for comparison, we can look at the Crusader real quick, which does the same thing roughly with Zealous Speech, but it costs 5 points. Right. So Knight moves. This is a scouting. Camp buff. Scouting camp buffs are really good. Scouting chance is very powerful in this game. Being able to know exactly where you're going to go and where you want to go, what fights to avoid, is very, very good. Cheap camp skills that grant a lot of scout are very good as well because it's easier to fit into the respite points that you have, the camp points. This being the cheapest camp skill for scouting is a very good camp skill. This is a very powerful camp skill. These are both very, very clickable on the Grave Robber in sticky situations or in good situations. Pilfer is trash. If you have 1 point left over, you can use it. Don't expect much from it. You're going to get a food and you're going to be like, okay, cool. Most of the time. Okay, let's talk about trinkets. So this is the Grave Robber page. This is all about her. We're going to talk about the rare and the very rare. Generally, uncommons and below are pretty not worthy to like run in the late game, so we don't, or not worthy to run period actually, so we don't actually talk about them. Lucky Talisman is her rare. 12 dodge, 10 accuracy on your range skills. So if you remember, my optimal set has only one range skill, and that's Thrown Dagger. 12 dodge is okay. This is a very strong number for dodge for just a rare trinket. This is not that relevant because our main skill is lunge. We're going to be using the ideal situation for Grave Robber is you go lunge, lunge, shadow fade, lunge, shadow fade, lunge, right? So very often you will not have like any range skills used in that kind of setup. So Lucky Talisman itself is a pretty useless trinket, but if you can sneak, if you think you'll be able to sneak some Thrown Daggers in there, it's definitely a very powerful trinket. But the thing is, after one use of Thrown Dagger, we've already buffed our accuracy with the Grave Robber skill. So that would be, Thrown Dagger actually buffs her own accuracy. So this actually ends up being useless after one Thrown Dagger anyways. But generally, you're not going to be using two. If you've lunged like 3 or 4 times and thrown daggered once in the middle of all of that, and you haven't killed your enemies, you need to do some more You need to put some more damage in your comp. Right. So Raider's Talisman is 5 crit. That's insane. That's a very big crit number. Plus 2 speed is okay. This is not that great because we're making a faster character already fast. I mean, we're making an already fast character even faster. Trap disarm chance doesn't matter too much. She already has the highest in the game, so she's already disarming traps at 100% efficiency anyway. This is not too powerful. These two are not very powerful, but it comes with plus 15 scouting chance, which is insane. That is almost the same as her camp skill in a trinket that you can hold. This is so powerful. This tag and the crit tag are very good. Minus 10% HP is fine. I would definitely trade like 3 or 4 points of Grave Robber's HP to get this buff and this buff on her. So I would say the very rare is a very powerful trinket. Definitely a Grave Robber staple. Until you reach the Darkest Dungeons, where Scout Chance doesn't matter anymore. And then it's just kind of reading 5 crit and 2 speed. I would stop running it in the Darkest Dungeons, but it's definitely a very powerful trinket during your training of the Grave Robber. Lucky Talisman, I wouldn't recommend too much. I like it a lot, but it's definitely has its flaws. And you should definitely get out of a position where you're running this too much. Okay, so team comps. I really recommend Grave Robber being in position 4. And the reason for that is that we want her to be able to lunge forward into position 2. And then ideally, we're going to have someone in position 3 after that in order to push her forward. So for example, the Shield Breaker will use her forward move, Pierce, and move her back into position 3 where she can lunge again. So she'll lunge again, like that. So that's 2 lunges in a row. That's very good. Then we Shadow Fade to bring her back to. And then we can lunge again. We can do a Shadow Fade and lunge kind of infinite. Or not really infinite, but a cycle. So let me just put a team comp together really rapidly. So other people who can dance, who can push her back into the position, called dancing. Other people who can dance with the Grave Robber are, so that Shieldbreaker is one of them. Crusader is another. Highwayman is another. Basically, anyone with a forward 1 move can do this. So that's also Man at Arms. The Jester can do it too with Dirk Stab, but I am not a personal fan of Dirk Stab. I think this is just his best set, this one right here. So, we don't have room for Dirk Stab. So, I don't recommend the Jester. You can try it. Definitely works. Just not my favorite. Right. So, let me throw a comp together real fast just to show what it could be. So it's she's the fastest character in the game, so she'll generally go before the other characters. So we can put someone like, we'll put the slowest character in the game that dances with her, which is the Crusader. So we have the big speed differential, so that she almost always goes first. And then we're gonna put like the Vestal, she's a good healer, and then we're gonna put someone in the front. Let's just stick the Shieldbreaker here because I'm about to do something else with her. So we're gonna lunge forward. That pushes everyone back into this kind of layout. And then your Crusader will go at the end of the turn, push her back. And then you'll have Grave Robber lunge forward, putting yourself into this type of position. And then you could even use a Shieldbreaker to bump her back into 2, where she can start using her Throne Dagger. So this is a scenario where Throne Dagger might be useful. Might be used. So this is a scenario where you might want to run the Lucky Talisman, the rare. So this is definitely the ideal situation for her, where she can get 2 lunges off and then start thinking about the fade stuff. Another good set of, I guess, another good comp for her is anyone that runs Blight heroes. I said the Blight bonus doesn't matter too much, and it's true, it doesn't matter too much, but it is still something to consider sometimes. Like if you could sneak in like a... Oh, I always, you should always run a Dancer with her. You should be using lunge endlessly, almost. So let's see, a Blighter that works in 4 and 3 sounds like a Plague Doctor. Very good. This is a very good idea. Then we need a healer for 1, so that's Occultist. So this is a good idea. This is kind of a good comp to try out. So like again, Crusader could be any Dancer. This is a good comp to try out for sure. And then the last thing is one where we're going to infinite lunge. We're going to set up infinite lunges like this. Well, let's actually move this out for a Vestal, just because we need a healer at the end of the day. Right. So in this comp, obviously, the Grave Robber moves 2 forward. Then the Shieldbreaker goes, uses Pierce to move forward, and then the Holy Lance goes to move the Crusader forward. And now we've kind of put ourselves back into the position we started with. So let me do that again. So Grave Robber moves forward, Shieldbreaker moves forward, Crusader moves forward. And again, we've cycled back into this position. Infinite lunges, you get infinite Holy Lances, which is another good move to be spamming. And we have infinite Pierces, which is like, I mean, she uses Pierce most of the time anyway, but decent idea. This is probably the weakest of the 3 that I've recommended, but it's because you shouldn't need to throw lunges and lances out that often. So you're kind of restricting yourself to running this kind of cycle and engine kind of thing of these 3. Obviously, we can also do something, any Dancers. So we can have Man-at-Arms here that works. We can have Highwaymen here that works. But yeah, you're restricting yourself to this 3-person engine. And you don't need to deal that much damage. So I still recommend just having this kind of a core at the end of the day. So, just as a whole, the Grave Robber, I would say, is in the upper C tier. The reason for that is that she's not very survivable in terms of, like, her bulk is not very good. Her damage is very low outside of the usage of lunge. She's got okay camp skills, but none that really buff her damage up any more than it already is at, which is really low. She kind of needs that. She's got good crit. That's very good, but it's unreliable. And her resistances are alright. Nothing too crazy. Blight her blight resist being high is very good. Trinkets are not too notable in the darkest dungeons, so she ends up being just kind of mediocre. So it's definitely C tier. Right. Okay, that just about finishes up the Grave Robber discussion here. The Grave Robber review.